What up, gamers? And today we're going to be live reacting to Mort Dog's patch rundown, and I'll be giving you guys my thoughts as we go through it on how I think these changes will shake out in the game, and then do a meta prediction for next patch. I'm usually pretty good at doing meta predictions, so you guys can know what to play on the first 2 days of the patch before we have a meta solidify. Now, before we actually go into this rundown, let's talk about kind of where we're coming from, the patch we're coming from. So just personally, I played a lot of the patch, the beginning of the patch, and I've kind of taken the past few days off of playing. Honestly, I've just gotten a little bit burnt out on the game because I was going really hard on content and everything during PvE and then the first week of the sets. And I actually, even though I just said I got a little bit burnt out, I just started playing again, having a lot of fun again. I actually think the launch meta is one of the best launch metas we've ever had. Like, it's not even that degenerate. It's like really not that degenerate, and it's kind of evolved quite a bit. So at the beginning of the patch, there was a lot of like random reroll comps people were playing. And then it kind of solidified around like jazz reroll and country reroll. And then from that point, people were like, oh, wait, you know what's OP? You know what's actually OP? The Superfan frontline. And Superfan frontline is such a cheap frontline. If I get an econ augment, I can go fast 9 because the fort costs just don't feel very good. And then so we kind of developed around a fast 9 meta with a little side of reroll. But the goal of reroll still is to go 9. So it's not even a reroll meta at all. And so we kind of solidified around that because we discovered Superfan plus Ziggs. Like, Superfan is such a cheap frontline, and then if you can get that online, and if you can get the Ziggs, you know, a Ziggs 2-star will win you the game, and you know, build around the legendary comp at the end. So we moved into that, and that's really where the meta sticking point has been. But I also think it's developed a little bit more, especially playing around the Akali lines, you know, Akali Karthus, Akali Ahri, and then TF lines. The reason why those lines are so good is because Akali can use random garbage, and then Karthus and Ahri are pretty solid. You know, they're solid duo carries, but they also hold the items for Ziggs. So those comps end up having great placement because Akali just wins you stage 5, and then if you need to first place the game, then you eventually transition to playing Ziggs as your main carry with maybe Akali, or transition out of Akali to Yorick or something like that. So those comps have been performing really well. And so what we'll be looking for in this is the AD lines. The AD lines are not terrible. They're not terrible, but the problem with the AD lines is they're just not as good as the AP lines. They're just slightly not as good, and they don't lead you to Ziggs. And so I think AD is very, very, very hard to play right now unless you are very far ahead or you're playing Samira reroll. And so that'll be some things we're looking to get changed in here. So with that out of the way, let's get into this.
Should mix things up and hopefully lead to an even healthier meta as we head into the Vegas Open. So let's jump right in. The first thing is minor. This is barely worth paying attention to, but we've renamed a bunch of the.
Yeah, I don't really care about this.
Mostly to deal with localization and making sure that the strings fit. That's really the motivation behind this. There isn't anything else to that. So we had to change some of the wordings. In English, you might be like, oh, this isn't shorter, but in other languages it is. It's really just about localization. So no other changes other than text here. The other one is for hyper role players. Stage 10 now has 3 additional PvP combat rounds, so you're not going to lead into these weird situations.
By the way, I have skimmed through this video a little bit. I watched it while I was making my coffee this morning.
Where, you know, you're at 18 health and then you go to stage 11 and lose and take 30 damage. That shouldn't be happening, so that will be fixed for hyper roll. That's it on the system side. So like I said, nothing major here. On the trait side, 8-bit is a trait that really hasn't taken off. It's kind of hard to play because when you first put it in, it actually does close to nothing, and you have to really ramp it up for it to be valuable, and that ramping can take time. So a lot of the time you're playing down a trait. So we're powering this trait up quite a bit, actually. It's going from 3.5610 to 4.5 7.512. Now that's maximum is multiplied by 10, so 45, 75, 120 at max. You know, for a 4-piece giving you 75% AD, that's pretty high. For comparison, Crowd Diver is 70% damage at 6 right now, so that is a big trait, but it will require stacking. This should be a healthy buff and hopefully make some of the 8-bit lines a little bit more playable.
And Caitlyn is also getting a buff later in the video, so we'll talk more about that when we get there. But I think Corki reroll in the right spot. Like, I think if you're high rolling, I don't think you force any 1-cost reroll, by the way. I think if you just start the game with 6 copies, you go for it. I've played a little bit of Corki reroll on this patch when I've like giga high rolled it, and it's felt okay. Like, you're always capped out at like the 3rd place. So I think you guys should really keep an eye on Corki reroll on next patch when you have the angle, not something to force or anything like that. But yeah, I think it's actually okay right now. I think Corki is very good on stage 2 and solid on stage 3. And at 3-star, it feels pretty good at stage 4. And maybe with these 8-bit buffs, you know, it can actually lead you, especially because Caitlyn is getting buffed as well. If you can lead into Caitlyn and Caitlyn kind of win your stage 4 in stage 5, then maybe we can see something with that along with your Corki 3, of course. So keep an eye on 8-bit reroll into vertical. Keep an eye on that.
The other thing is that the grand prize score for 6-8-bit, we hear you, it's way too hard.
It's way too hard. Yeah, I didn't even hit this on PvE. Like, I tried on PvE and I couldn't hit it.
Hard to hit. It has been hit, but it is way too hard. It requires too much. So we do want to make it hard, but accessible. So we're lowering it quite a bit here. 345,678, a little less than Hyperroll. Again, it's still going to be tough. Honestly, this might even need to come down further, but we want to take it slow. But this should at least, it is 111,000 off, so it should be more achievable if you're trying to go for that. On the nerf side, Country is getting a very small invisible nerf here. The 3-piece, for those who don't know, when Hecarim comes out, he gives your team 20% attack speed. That's going to go down to 15%. Should just help keep early 3 Country in the early game still.
Yeah, I think 3 Country needs to be nerfed a little bit. Still, you can play no Chosen. If you get an Urgot drop, Urgot is just like the king of stage. If you get Urgot, he's like the best champion in the world on stage 2. So if you get an Urgot drop, you don't even have to take a Chosen. And if you can get 3 Country in, you usually you stand to win streak on stage 2 a lot of the times without a Chosen, which is pretty not very healthy.
A little down, no big deal. And the 5-piece gives
especially with Urgot
revamp to all the Country units. It is only the Country units, but that is also going to go down to 15%. Again, should hopefully be kind of barely noticeable, but just the nudge Country needs. Guardian, this is a bigger nerf. Guardian was definitely overstated compared to some of the other survivable traits like Brawler or Bruiser and Sentinel.
Yeah, 4 Guardian mid game is very good, especially with Superfan.
So Guardian is getting hit at 2.
Superfan into like a Mumu Chosen is like so broken.
It's only going to go from 30 to 25. At 4, it's going to go from 50 to 40. And at 6, it's going to go from 70 to 60. This is one of the things that will nerf the Superfan package. Nico and Kennen will get less shields from Guardian. It should make those 4 Guardian mid games actually a little bit more tolerable. So it is going to nerf the Guardian line a bit. Right now, it's kind of the premier front line. Jazz is the other big one. This is a big nerf. This is not a small nerf, but realistically, Jazz was very easy to slot in. We really underestimated how easy it would be to build late game boards that had 7, 8, 9 traits.
I think the biggest problem with Jazz, and this is a great nerf. I think the biggest problem with Jazz is how easy it is to actually slot in mid game. Like that Jazz comp mid game unupgraded feels really good because compounding with Superfan activates so many traits that frontline does because it uses so many 3 trait units like Lilia, Kennen, and Echo. So yeah, I think that's actually what makes it broken. But yeah, it is easy to slot in late game, but I thought that was the point. But I'm down with a nerf. I think actually mid game is more the problem.
People buy a lot of the legendaries, optimize with like 2 rapid fire, 2 sentinel, things like that, and then throw in a misfortune and a bard or a misfortune and a Lucian commonly to get that rapid fire.
But this is a good catch because I think with the Caitlyn buffs and with Ziggs nerfs, I think a common late game out, especially if you're playing around 80 lines, I do think 80 lines are going to be a lot better next patch. I think playing around a Kali and an AP carry is probably still going to be the best 4 cost, stage 5 comp. But Caitlyn's getting a lot of buffs, 8-bit's getting a lot of buffs, and Ziggs getting nerfed kind of makes me feel like the common legendary out is going to be playing around Alawi, Yorick, and Lucian. I think it's going to be what's more important. Now, Ziggs is still going to be great. You're going to see the Ziggs nerfs up here. But I'm just saying right now when you're playing like TFT, what it feels right now, you always want to get to a Ziggs 2-star, and then occasionally you'll carry Jhin. Occasionally, like you really don't want to carry Lucian. Like, I don't know, it feels kind of weird to carry. But like you really want to carry Ziggs. You really want to get an Alawi and a Yorick on your board. And so, but with the rapid fire, or with with the 8-bit buffs and Caitlyn buffs and Ezreal's getting buff, like maybe an 80 line into like ending your board with Caitlyn, Lucian, Misfortune, and Jhin might be the most common in-game scenario with just the Giga frontline with Yorick and Alawi, rather than what we currently have where you always try to play Ziggs and then occasionally you'll play that 80 in-game, but it's kind of hard to get online.
And it's just too much power. So we are going to be nerfing it.
So with that in mind, the only reason why I'm saying this is because Jazz would need to be nerfed. I think this is a good catch, like for sure.
The HP is the big one because, man, it gives you a lot of HP. Getting upwards of 40% HP for your entire team is too much. So the HP is going to go down quite a bit here from 234 to 1.523. So again, chunky nerf there. And the damage is also going to go down, but only at 3 and 4. We don't want to nerf too much here, but the damage is going to go from 123 to 1.52. So again, this is a chunky nerf. But it should open up more lines and feel like you don't have to play Jazz in the end game without missing out on massive amounts of stats. So probably the biggest nerf in the patch.
Yeah, I think this is good.
With the second biggest nerf being Kennen, because Kennen has another nerf we'll talk about later, but Kennen also got Guardian hit, things like that. Kennen also, for being as tanky as he is providing too much damage because he's also a super fan. He's got that true damage. So the damage is getting about a 10% nerf here.
Now, this is like kind of the end of the super fan nerfs pretty much. I mean, I think he said there's like one more thing, but I feel like this is the, honestly, he has his headliner getting nerfed a little bit, which is whatever. I still think, guys, Superfan is probably still the best early and mid-game frontline. It's just so cheap. It gives you so many traits. It's so good. But I don't think it'll be something you just hard force every game like it kind of feels like right now. Like right now, you don't actually have to play Superfan every game. I've been having a lot of success tempoing with other frontlines and stuff lately. And I've seen other people have success with that, but it feels way better when you have this. I actually think these small little nerfs, still Superfan is the preferred frontline. I still think that. I mean, KDA is it's just so fun to play around. It's like so easy to play around KDA. Leads you into Akali really well. Like, it leads you into a lot of the good mid-game comps like Jazz. I mean, Jazz is getting nerfed a little bit. I still think mid-game Jazz is going to be good. I still think like mid-game Vex, like it leads you into Vex so easily because you're playing around Guardians. Like, all these nerfs do put the game in a lot healthier spot, but I still think Superfan is probably the preferred frontline. But again, I don't think Superfan is like that broken. And coming down now a little bit, I think it'll just be the preferred frontline, but not like out of this world broken. So I'm a big fan of all these small changes, actually.
Cassante, definitely one of the weakest front lines in the game right now. We're trying to give him a little less downtime where he's not in that tanky stance. So the mana's going to go from 60 to 40. And
I'm going to be honest. I'm really surprised Cassante's getting buffed, especially from 60 to 40. I was thinking like maybe he'd get a small buff, maybe 60 to 50, but maybe that isn't significant in his numbers, but I feel like it would be even because he's a frontliner. Guys, I think Cassante is actually a good tank, like legit. And with Guardian getting nerfed a little bit, like Sentinel is going to, like that indirectly raises the value of Sentinel, and they're buffing Yone as well. Like I actually think 5 Heartsteel is a very good comp mid game. Now you lose rounds, but you want to lose rounds. Guys, if you're high rolling Cassante, look out for reroll Cassante. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to be OP or anything like that, or it's actually going to be good, but I played it a lot on PBE. It felt pretty good, and then they nerfed him a little bit, and I stopped playing it. And I actually think he's a early and mid game monster at 3-star if you're high rolling it. So, like, honestly, look out for reroll Cassante. If you just start the game with 6 copies, go for it. The build is Sterix BT +1, like Sterix BT Redemption. Feels very, 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 very good. His damage reduction is insane. And now with his mana being nerfed like this, like, and then you just put a Last Whisper on your Aphelios and put it behind him. Like, look out for that. It's a really fun build as well. That's not going to be OP or anything like that, but I think when you have the angle, you can totally go for Heartsteel reroll now.
he'll slap back a little harder.
Which, by the way, you just go Cassante 3. Don't care about Aphelios. He sucks. And then just move into Ezreal, because Ezreal is also getting buffed.
Expecting us to open up like some weird AD build or anything like that, but we do want Cassante to survive a little longer. This should help.
Dude, okay, sorry. I'm going to say it one more time. Like, I do actually think when you start the game with 6 Cassantes, you can totally go for this, build the items that I just said, and then go into an Ezreal to carry your like early part of your late game. You're gonna have to cap out with legendaries, of course, but you have extra econ with Heartsteel. Like, I actually think it's not bad. Like, legit.
And Heartsteel,
I could be tripping.
Able to play around that. Yasuo, we're giving Yasuo a buff. It's a very small one, but again, with Vegas coming up, we couldn't go too big here. So he's getting about a 5% buff on his spell. That's going to go from 275 to 290. Should hopefully make Yasuo a potential option to play, along with some of the other buffs and some of the other nerfs. And then finally, Yone.
Yeah, but important about Yasuo is Kennen got nerfed, and the Superfan front line, he actually relies on that a lot. So I don't think this is enough to play Yasuo because his comp got nerfed.
2 and 3 costs, so no 2 costs. But hold on, don't freak out, Katarina people. Yone here is going to get some extra HP, and his spell's going to hit a little harder. Again, very minor buffs here. I actually believe Yone needs a little more than this, but we didn't want to overbuff Heartsteel. And again, Edgelord, same thing. We don't want to buff Yasuo and Yone and Kayn.
I'm not sure about Yone. I think he does need a tiny buff. Like, Edgelords feel so bad. I don't know. I feel like Yone feels like the best of them, though, for some reason to me. I don't know. Something needs to change with Edgelords for sure. So
too crazy. So we are going very conservative this patch. Again, that is the big.
I don't think you guys should be playing Edgelords next patch still.
Message.
By the way,
to keep it conservative. So small HP buff.
I have to wait for next patch. I think.
Opens up some Yone lines. Doesn't solve all the problems like him having to deal with Thresh plus Echo and just getting stunned to death, things like that. Those will have to wait until after Vegas.
I just think you always build QSS, don't you?
All right, 4 costs. This is probably the biggest batch of changes here, and you can see it's a lot of green text. 4 costs right now kind of feel like the cost you skip. Yes, there's the Karthus KDA Akali line, but really other than that, you know, some of the tanks, you kind of skip all these champions. You go straight to 5, or so the level 9, play the 5 cost, things like that. So all of these champions are getting pretty sizable buffs, actually. Akali's going to gain some attack speed, and her spell's going to hit harder. This is the true damage Akali.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a nice little buff, but like, why would you ever play true damage Akali, like, ever? The only scenario that I see this this buff actually mattering a lot is if you high roll like Senna 3-star really early on in the game and you're going to be playing vertical true damage, and then you're like stage 5 out actually feels a lot better, because right now if you play Senna reroll, it's not so bad. Like, it's not super good, but if you hit an early 3-star Senna, you can tempo really hard stage 3, stage 4, but then your comp just feels like there's a crater once you hit stage 5, because true damage Akali is the unit that you add that's supposed to carry that portion of the game before you can get to the Lucian and like legendary frontline and stuff like that. So it'll help that power curve a lot. That's where when I'm seeing these buffs, that's what I'm thinking about a lot. Because I still think there's never any reason why you would not want to play KDA Akali over true damage Akali. But you know, true damage vertical, that's going to feel a lot better. So look out for them center rerolls when you get true damage chosen. This is actually a significant buff to that build.
Caitlyn's spell is going to hit harder. We went light on Caitlyn because she did get that big 8-bit buff, and she's kind of the 8-bit carry. So the combination of those two should help her. Ezreal is getting some more attack speed, so he'll get to his ult quicker, and the single target spell damage is going up. We're not buffing that ult. That ult is really good.
The ult is good,
It
yeah.
takes him a little long to get that, so that attack speed should help.
Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Does this make AD lines OP? I don't think so. I think AD lines actually feel okay, but they only feel good when you're ahead. They feel really bad when you're behind because, again, capping out, like, you can stabilize on Ezreal. You know, if you're at 40 HP, you stabilize on an Ezreal like midway of stage 4. I mean, and you're like doing okay. And then stage 5 happens, and then like the guys who are fast 9 have the Ziggs. The people who are rerolling Jazz have their 3 stars, and then you just like start to win loss, and then your in-game cap that you go to is, you know, you built like 80 actual AD carry items. If you don't get like a Yorick chosen, your in-game cap is like Jhin, Lucian. And those are just not as good as the AP caps. So like when you're competing against the people who stabilized on Ahri Akali, and now they're hitting their Ziggs and they're transitioning to that, you're just weaker. Like you're already like, you know, probably weaker than them early parts of stage 5, late parts of stage 4. And then they're just stronger than you. Their cap is stronger than you. So that's why 80 feels really bad right now. It's fine to play from ahead, but feels really bad from behind. And I think these buffs actually are very significant, especially with the Corki 8-bit line being buffed in the early game. And additionally, the Heartsteel line, where you want to play a lot of AD carries, got buffed. Additionally, Ziggs is getting nerfed. So your in-game cap feels better on the AD lines opposed to the AP line. So do not sleep on this. I'm actually going to look to play some AD carries the first couple days of the patch. I still think the AP lines are still just as good and maybe even better. But I am going to be way more open to playing the AD lines, like slamming some IEs and stuff like that. You know, like feel a little bit more comfortable doing that.
Viego, we're buffing the slam damage quite a bit, actually. It is just the slam. Most of his damage is actually the autos afterwards, not the slam. But if you invest AD items on Viego, this should feel rewarding.
I think it's a really big buff to vertical pentakill. That's one of the verticals that feel kind of good if you get an emblem somehow. I mean, everybody knows this. You put the pentakill emblem on the Akali, and then you toss some Morello and like tankier items on Viego. I think this is actually really nice, especially if you go like, you know, if you put like a Morello or a red buff, and then you go like Sterix +1 or something like that. Seems like it'll actually contribute a lot to the damage of the vertical pentakill. I don't think this actually makes it to where you want to play Viego as primary, though. I still don't think you should play. I don't think you should ever play Viego as primary. He should be like third carry.
Rewarding that slam should hit hard. And then
he has good utility.
Zed is one of those champions that actually does have some playable builds that are pretty hard. So we didn't want to overbuff Zed. He might need more later, especially around EDM. EDM is a trait that is clear.
So Zed is being buffed right here. I actually don't think Zed needs a buff at 1 and 2 star, because I actually think he's pretty stable on 4 Crowd Diver. They're nerfing 6 Crowd Diver, which is like how you actually win the game with Zed. I'm not sure if he actually needs buffs, but considering all the other AD carries are getting buffs, I think that's fair. But I actually think Zed, if you just like are ahead and you have, you built the frontline AD carry items, like you start with Katarina and you move into this, like I actually think it's pretty good at 4. But you can't win. But it is a lot harder to play. So I agree. So
Clearly been too difficult.
We'll see how this shakes out.
But again, with pre-Vegas, want to be conservative, and this is actually mostly to compensate for the Crowd Diver nerf you're going to see later, more than anything else.
I think a lot of people are just bad at playing Zed, honestly.
But again, hopefully some of these AD carries should be playable.
If you guys want to know how to play Zed better, watch Mismatched Socks. He plays a lot of Zed.
In the stage 4-2 to 4-6 kind of area, and open up some more lines. And then on the 5-cost side, Kayn, clearly the worst legendary, getting a big chunk of attack speed to help him cast quicker, and the cast is going up, a little bit of damage here, about 5%.
His attack speed is nice.
So Kayn, again, might need more than this, to be honest. I think that spell damage might need to go up more, but again, don't want to overbuff for Vegas. And then Ziggs, this is the other really...
Yeah, I could see this being like 650 at 2 star, and be the right spot.
5 more on the mana, which won't affect his Shojin builds, really. But the big one here is he's not going to scale up nearly as fast. Going from 2 to 1 extra small bomb per cast, pretty big deal here. That is going to hurt Ziggs.
Yeah, basically, is right now, if Ziggs casts 3 times, he wins the fight guaranteed. And so maybe that doesn't happen now.
So he
we'll
shouldn't be
see.
the best 5-cost far and away anymore. Should still be a 5-cost, should still be valuable, but nothing too crazy. Okay, New category here for this set, headliner bonuses. As I mentioned, one of the cool things about this set this time is that every champion has a unique headliner bonus, and we can balance accordingly around
Ooh, I didn't notice this Bard nerf the first time through.
those. So, Kennen, that 4% max.
I don't even think Jazz Reroll is like that oppressive anymore. I wouldn't play Jazz Reroll anymore personally, unless you're high rolling.
Heal that he gets per jolt, which means he casts 4 of those jolts usually because you've got his bling bonus activated. He was healing 16%.
Especially with all the 4 costs being buffed.
Of his health every cast. That's going to go all the way down to 8, 2% per jolt. So that is a nerf. Bard headliner, very small nerf here. We don't want to overkill this with Jazz. Honestly, this one's debatable, but we just want to be careful. So small nerf to that headliner Bard only. Base Bard should still be a really cool carry in the early.
Yeah, I don't even know if Bard needed to be nerfed, if I'm being honest.
Game, he still hits like a truck, but just a bit of a nerf to that. Katarina headliner. This one was definitely a little over budget. So loses 50 HP, and that.
I don't think you play Jazz Reroll anymore. I think you can play it for mid game tempo and it's still okay. Like, yeah.
Bounce instead of doing 45% extra damage, it's going to do 20%.
Because like you're going to be building like MF items, and with like Ezreal and Caitlyn being a lot stronger, I think you actually can have a smoother power curve going from like an MF, like an early game AD chosen, like a Corki, into an MF chosen, into a Caitlyn or something like that. I think that power curve feels a lot better now. So I don't think you should reroll this anymore unless you're like Giga high roll.
5% extra damage. But again, Katarina should still be good. We're not nerfing base Katarina, only the headliner and only a little bit. Misfortune, same thing. Misfortune's traits are so valuable. Big Shot's also getting some buffs through things like 8-bit. We don't want to, and Ezreal, we don't want to over buff Big Shot. So Misfortune AD is going to go down a bit. Samira headliner's another one. Samira headliner has that.
I did not realize Samira headliner got this much AD.
Built-in AD.
That's crazy.
The crit really empowers her. We didn't want to take away that. But the AD is going to go down to 5%. She's still a great champion, but we also don't want to nerf base Samira. We think that champion's fine. Headliner Set. This is a nerf from 250 to 150, but it's mostly compensation for the fact we actually fixed his headliner. It will now stack and give HP. So overall, set headliner should be.
So like the set headliner is bugged on not giving stacking. I played a set headliner reroll game last night, and I was wondering why he wasn't that tanky. I got him really early in the game, so I guess he's bugged. That makes sense to me because he did not feel that good, but I feel like he should have felt good.
Better, not worse. You'll actually get to take advantage of that. So
okay, very cool.
Zac Headliner is going to get 50 more HP and 5 more AP. So if you want to go Zac Headliner, that should be a little bit better. And then Ziggs, kind of a second nerf here. The 10 mana reduction is going to go down to 5. So what this really means is Headliner Ziggs went from 60 mana to 70 mana. So Headliner Ziggs taking a big chunk.
Especially if you had to play Hyper Pop Chosen. Normally you always try to play Dazzler Chosen Ziggs, but especially Hyper Pop Chosen, like it's going to feel even worse.
So 10 less mana plus the less bombs.
With this mana reduction.
And again, all of these, could we go harder? Maybe, but pre-Vegas, we don't want to be rapidly shifting the meta. So we're going to do this for Vegas and then reevaluate after. All right, on the Augment side, not a lot of crazy stuff here. Good for Something 1 has been nerfed because we did.
Okay, this is like when I was looking into the stats when I did the Augment video the other day, I was like, man, why is this Augment performing so well? It turns out it's bugged.
Fix it. For those who correctly called this, it is dropping at 50%, not the intended 30%. We fixed that bug.
So take this Augment while you can.
50 XP. It felt a little weird to just get the XP and nothing to play with here. So
yeah.
10 gold. Young, Wild, and Free now correctly drops gold. The tooltip says drops 3 gold, but it never did. So it is a buff.
Yeah, this is why it doesn't perform really well in the data on stage 2, because it's actually supposed to give you gold. But it's really good on stage 3.
So it's already an Augment that can do very well. So we're just lowering it to 2 gold. So overall, it went from 0 to 2 gold. It is technically buffed. Bigger Shot. This is a pretty big nerf. There was a bug where, Bigger Shot says 65% damage on that AoE, but it was also hitting the primary target for an extra 100%. That bug has been fixed.
Oh, wow.
So this Augment has been nerfed because of
Actually, I didn't know that.
Live for Danger. This is the Edgelord Augment. Has been buffed from 30% to 40%. Sorry,
I don't think this makes you play Edge Lords, guys.
the color's wrong here. That's a buff, not a nerf. Live for Danger has been buffed. My bad.
I think it's really hard to play Edge Lord reroll. Still, like it's just like, I don't know, man. It feels like you should always play the AD4 cost now, especially with them being buffed.
Weird Augment that allows your rapid fire.
Well, I could be wrong.
It's really fun when it works, but it doesn't give you any initial power, which is pretty bad.
Yeah.
So now it's going to start you at 3 stacks immediately. So if you've got 4 rapid fire, this Augment.
This is very relevant, especially for Senna reroll comps, because this Augment feels terrible to take. If you want to play, if you high roll Senna reroll and you get the rapid fire variation, and Caitlyn feels a lot better now. So like you reroll Aphelios and Senna, and then you can, move into Caitlyn and then switch your Aphelios 3-star for a Lucian. Like I think Lucian 1's better than Aphelios 3, being honest. Maybe actually consider taking this now in those situations, or like Heartsteel reroll.
Augment starts you at 21% attack speed and then ramps up all the way up to 30 stacks. So that should make this Augment a little bit better if you want to play rapid fire build. Submit to the Pit. All the stats given to Moshers goes from 3 to 5.
Ooh, guys. So I don't know if any of you guys have tried the Gnar reroll build, the Gnar Fast 9 reroll when you're high rolling. I played that yesterday. I got a top 2. Ooh, but I got this Augment offered and I almost took it because I ended up playing 6 Mosher. Because I capped my board with a Yorick 2-star and a Poppy 2-star. But I still did not take this. I will strongly consider taking this if I play like a Gnar reroll build.
But kind of underperforming anyway. That's Jazz Baby, probably one of the most overtuned augments combined with the trait here. But even with the trait nerf,
Ooh, it's being half the HP
comparatively to other augments, especially gotten at 2-1. The cap was just way too high. So
Yeah.
actually lowering the HP in half, you're gonna have a lot less HP from this augment, but only the attack speed going down 1% here, so nothing too crazy. And we're not actually nerfing the AD and AP, so you can definitely still make a really.
I actually think this augment is like not even that OP. Like maybe I think it lower yields for sure, but I think people have started to like, since people are contesting the comp now and people have gotten so much better at capping out on zigs and stuff like that. Like it doesn't actually feel like a free win anymore, like it did earlier in the patch.
Really powerful misfortune. If you want to play,
I think it's actually a slightly over nerf. Actually, I think it's slightly over nerf, especially with Jazz being nerfed directly. I don't know. I'm not going to be taking this augment next patch. I think if you're high rolling the comp, you get that Jazz baby, you can definitely go for it. But I will not be playing Jazz reroll anymore.
But it isn't going to be a 34% win rate augment, so help. Binary airdrop, very good augment, has been overperforming for a while. Now instead of granting a component, we'll grant 2 gold. That is a nerf. Endless Hordes, really doing well this set, especially with Jazz. Yes, Jazz has been nerfed, but the augment still will probably overperform. So we're lowering the HP reduction from 15% to 20%. Going long now grants 8 gold immediately. Kind of a weaker March of Progress right now.
This might be an unpopular opinion. Like I feel like I have a few hot takes in this video. I actually think going long is pretty good. I know it performs really poorly in the stats. Yeah, I think it is worse than March of Progress, especially with like a lot of some 3-cost rerolls being viable, which is what you want to play when you're playing March of Progress. The thing I really like about going long is that I can roll whenever I want and it feels pretty good. And I can also go, if I'm high rolling, I can go to 8 earlier than if I played March of Progress. I actually take this augment. I know a lot of people don't like it. It feels like a really good top 4 augment for me. Now my placement ends up not being super high. I think it performs really poorly in the data because it's really hard to first place when you take this augment. Like I think you're kind of gated at a top 2 a lot of the times. And I think you got to play like omega aggressive and roll a lot. And I think some people just aren't doing that whenever they take this. And so I actually think it's okay. In this 8 gold, I will definitely be taking this augment when I see it now. Because I can go instant level 5, feel really good about it, roll for a 2-cost chosen, tempo so hard, early game, go early level 6, hit my preferred front line. And then get, if I can streak like that, I can go early level 7, go for a 3-cost shot. I feel like you can tempo really hard with this if you know what you're doing.
Right now, it might still be, but at least the 8 gold will give you an option to power level and get ahead of that curve. So there should be a pretty big buff for going long. And then Infernal Contract, we're just giving 15 more gold. This is an augment that also kind of struggles, especially with some of the 3 costs. But at least I think
the issue with Infernal Contract is just like it's so easy to go level 8 now. Like this augment felt really good last set because a lot of games you just couldn't go 8. It was just so expensive. And you could reliably hit 4-cost carries on 7. So like you could take Infernal Contract and hit the, like that patch where the challengers are OP, like you can guarantee hit your Fiora 2-star and then win just off a mid-game tempo. Like that's just not reality anymore. So I don't know. I think this augment is in a tough spot unless 3-cost rerolls are really, really strong. Because again, even when you play 3-cost rerolls, you want to go 8, you want to fit in legendaries, you want to fit in Jazz, you want to fit in Alawi, you want to fit in Yorick. Like I think it's just really hard to win the game if you're not playing like Alawi or Yorick or something.
At least having a little extra gold to roll might guarantee you hit some of those 3-star 3 costs that you're playing with this comp. All right, traits. Some small trait changes. Very tiny things here. Bruiser, definitely underperforming at 4 and 6.
Yeah, man.
Playing 2. That 100 health matters a lot. But 4, especially with Alawi.
Yeah, 4 Bruiser doesn't even feel good on stage 2.
An amazing champion. But 4 and 6, not really worth playing. Again, because it's Vegas going very light for now. Probably needs more than this. I don't think this is magically going to make Bruiser meta, but hopefully should at least...
This is an interesting buff to like EDM lines as well. Like occasionally whenever you play like Lux EDM chosen, you'll play 4 Bruiser as a budget frontline. But that feels a lot worse right now. And then additionally, if you get Zachary chosen got buffed, his HP got buffed. And so if you get Zachary Bruiser chosen and want to do some EDM stuff, like that's kind of interesting there.
To make it not a
consider that.
Especially like 4 early. I imagine 4 Bruiser should be pretty good in the early game. Crowd Diver definitely caps out a little high at 6, so the 6 piece is being nerfed down to 60%.
Yeah, maybe he can actually carry Olaf on stage 2. He doesn't. I never buy that unit.
Executioner. This is one that I think for those of you who are like, hey, Akali and Karthus might need nerfs. This is kind of the Akali Karthus nerf that you're going to see. 2 Executioner was the big nerf we were aiming for here, going from 15 to 5%. Just the critical strike damage, not the chance. So Samira should still be fine and get those crits she needs.
I think this is really relevant on, especially for Karthus the most. So he'll less reliably one-shot your carry at the beginning of the fight. I actually think that'll. I don't know if this will feel noticeable, but I think this will be very significant. This will probably stop some break points where Karthus would be one-shotting your carry at the beginning of the fight.
But then we had to nerf 4 because like going from 5 to 30 was too big a jump. So it's 5, 25.
I don't think this is a big enough nerf to not play Karthus Akali though. Like still play that line if you like playing that.
Again, may need some follow-up buffs to things like Twitch or Vex. But for now, this was what we needed for the Vegas. Finally, on the champ small side, for those of you that were looking for an Annie nerf, we don't actually think Annie needs that big a nerf, but
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Shojin, a Nasher, and then a second Shojin from Superfan, and play
Yeah, it feels silly that her best in slot is Sojin, Nashers, and you get that from Superfan.
really well early. So we're nerfing her by changing her Superfan item from Spear of Shojin to Jeweled Gauntlet. Jeweled Gauntlet is not an optimal item for her. It's okay, but this shouldn't help you get best in slot as quick and easy, and that should be all the nerfs she needs for now for Vegas. So
I think so.
Still be playable. And then Ari. Ari is one that if you hit 3-star Ari and got 6th place, not calling out anyone in particular or myself or anything, you know that Ari's big weaknesses. Even if she was hitting for 10,000 damage, she still has to go 1.
Yeah, cool. All right, 3-star R is gonna feel a little better. Let's get to the bug fixes.
Bug fixes, a lot of bug fixes. Try to go through these quick here. Fixed an issue where sometimes Alawi would revive 2 tentacles with her cast instead of 1. Teaming up 1 now correctly grants 2 3 costs instead of 3, so there is a nerf to that augment. Kali properly combines when your bench is full. The Showtime portal is now available in Hyperroll.
Yeah.
The item portal now displays the correct round in its tooltip in Hyperroll. Gambler's Blade and Diamond Hands now properly work in the artifact pool and are affected by...
And you can use Reforger on them now.
Kiana can no longer give units invisible 4th items. Your KDA pattern...
Oh, what?
After triggering last stand. Augment Little Buddies now works with true damage.
Oh, that's good.
Counting as a 4 cost for some reason. Wellness Fund, Risky Moves, and Tiniest Titan have been removed from the double up augment pool. Gambler's Blade now correctly works in Hyperroll and uses the Hyperroll values. Using an item remover on a champion without enough empty item bench slots will now correctly bounce off rather than removing as many items as possible. Headliner sets
Very good. That's very good. That's very good.
That out earlier. Poros on Poor Ranger HQ no longer disappear when zooming in. Health bar no longer blocks Chibi Kaisa when performing some of her emotes. For all Prancy's Angry Mark VFX are fixed, so if you're a Prancy Little Legend fan. Blank Slate should no longer sell Tome of Traits on the bench. Submit to the Pit now only applies to Moshers. Apparently it was applying to your whole team. Not that made the augment any good, but at least now it applies to what it says it does. Blinged Out now counts full benefits for Thieves Gloves. It was counting as 1 item. Now it counts as 3. And then hopefully this one...
Well, when you're playing Submit to the Pit, you're playing Vertical Moshers anyways, so pretty much your whole team was Moshers.
Here, but double up, we should have fixed the issue where Crowd Divers would become invulnerable for the rest of combat. Now again, this is generally a small patch, but things like the Jazz, the Guardian, the Kennen, the Zig...
Okay, so let me give my opinion on the patch. So I think everything you were playing last patch, except for Jazz reroll, is still going to be viable. So if you guys like playing TF into Ziggs, I still think that's fine. It's not going to feel as like I don't think you can play. I don't think you could be as behind as you were when you were playing that. If you guys were forcing a lot of like TF into Ziggs or Ari into Ziggs, it's not going to feel as good because the AD lines I think will have a comparable win out to you. So like playing, just forcing that from behind, I don't think is going to be as good. But I still think if you guys like those lines and you play them from ahead or you play them from a decent spot, I think it's still going to be very good. AD lines, I think it will be something. Seriously, the first couple of days of the patch, consider playing, like, especially if you have a Corki opener. I think Corki is actually very good. 8-bit got buffed. Like, really consider playing around Heartsteel or Corki openers if you get them offered. And be willing to build AD items. And I actually think with these changes, AD will actually be comparable to AP outside of just a Kali. So again, if you guys really like playing what you played last patch, totally, you can just keep doing that. Don't play Jazz reroll anymore. I think Country reroll is a little bit worse as well. I think Senna reroll got slightly buffed because if the true damage variation. I think Heartsteel got buffed a lot. I don't think you play Edgelords. I think you can totally play Caitlyn and Ezreal on stage 5, and that can be a decent way to stabilize your board. It's okay right now. It's just, it doesn't lead you to anything good. And consider capping out your legendary board with a Lucian and Jhin duo carry, especially if you play those AD lines. So I think a very similar meta to what we got, but should be in a healthier spot. I actually really like these patch changes. Very cool, Mort Dog. I'll be very excited to start next patch.